Going to call the meeting to order. It's nice to see familiar faces again back sitting around the table, and hopefully we can keep on rolling this way. That being said, I'd like approval of the agenda for September 7th meeting. Moved by Debbie, second by Sherry. Any questions, comments? All in favor of the motion? Motion's carried. Any conflicts of pecuniary interest or the general nature thereof? Showing none. I'd like the approval of the minutes of the August 16th, 2021 Stone Mill Regular Council meeting. Moved by Doug, second by Wenda. Any questions, comments? All in favor of the motion? Motion's carried. Delegations, deputations, none. Bylaws and resolution. I'm going to hand this over to Jason Sands. We have quite a bunch of them here. Jason's going to go through them just roughly and go ahead. We're just going to go through there and maybe one motion at the end to do them all. Is that okay with everybody? Okay.
Thank you, Your Worship. And through you, a fair number, 7 bylaws, I believe, are all before you this evening as it relates to specific road widenings in which the municipality has obtained over the past year through the processing of severance applications. Many of us are aware through the consent process, there's a survey completed, and at the time of the survey, there's validation that the municipality truly owns the 66-foot wide right-of-way and road allowance. And when that is deficient, the applicant is required to convey the strip to whatever width as necessary to ensure the municipality has full right-of-way width. As part of that process, and when the municipality becomes in possession of that ownership to that new strip of land across the frontage of the severed parcels, we bring forward a bylaw, and the bylaw seeks to change the declaration of that land to ensure that it's deeded as a public highway to follow suit with what we have for actual roads. So that's simply what's before us this evening in the 7 bylaws, and the reason that there's 7 is because they just coincide with 7 separate applications. So we've included a map with each of the specific bylaws to try and associate a locational context to them. For example, the Lockridge bylaw 6A on your agenda was Rick Lockridge, who severed a property on Lockridge Road, for example, and so forth. They're all the same bylaws with different reference plan numbers and different legal descriptions. And if there are any questions specifically about any of the 7 bylaws, I'm absolutely happy to answer any of your questions this evening. Thank you.
Does anybody have any questions for Jason? If not, I'm looking for a motion to give first, second, third reading of all the bylaws. Moved by Sherry, second by Wenda. All in favor of the motion? Motion's carried. Thanks, Jason. Financial accounts, staff reports, manager, development services, stands.
Thank you, Your Worship. Item 8A sub I on tonight's agenda relates to the affordable housing partnership that the Township of Stone Mills is proposing to strike with our upper tier, the County of Livingston Addington, in their quest to develop a 4-plex within one of the 4 lower tiers of the county's jurisdiction. Many of you will be familiar with this topic as we discussed it at the last council agenda a month ago, as it relates to identifying parcels or a parcel of land within our jurisdiction, which happens to be in the ownership of the township, that could be conveyed to the county for $1 to assist with locating such housing development within our jurisdiction. Township staff, who received the endorsement from council at the previous meeting with the motions that were approved, went and proceeded with the negotiation and work with the County of Livingston Addington staff as it relates to securing a desirable spot or location that they would see fit in our municipality. The attached map associated with this report this evening demonstrates or illustrates how a location at the Tamworth Fire Hall on County Road 4 it is, in the opinion of staff, a very suitable location for such development. As we discussed at the previous meeting, one of the key focuses of this exercise was demonstrating the desire to look, or obtaining the land to be located within a hamlet or village, and locating and finding a 2-acre parcel of municipal owned land in a hamlet boundary is not an easy exercise. So this parcel, 630 County Road 4, has significant site area to accommodate the desires of the county. And with what management at the township sees as this being a very good impetus to creating an intensification project in what we consider a somewhat underutilized site in the hamlet of Tamworth. So you can see on the screen directly behind the fire hall building is the current gravel parking lot that's utilized for the soccer pitch. As well, the land behind that to the south is what we've identified as being 2 acres in size and suitable for the fourplex that's desired for the county's affordable housing project. Well, I recall there was one question at the previous council meeting asking clarification as to what number of units and what number of bedrooms each of the units would contain. The county's project is for a 4-unit building, each of which containing 1-bed units. So it's a very small footprint. As you can see, that's a to-scale drawing in your package that shows how that would illustrate and fit on a 2-acre site. But when you give the factors such as on-site septic, well, parking spaces, driveways, walk aisles, etc., for that multiple units, we see that the 2 acres as being a good fit for such a use. Obviously, that hasn't been scaled out in total detail in terms of site area for driveways, etc. But that is to satisfy what the county seeks as a minimum lot area requirement. So before you this evening, staff are recommending that you continue the support to direct us staff to work with the county staff on securing a suitable location. And the 2 criteria that the county have put forward to us lower tiers is that we provide them a commitment from council that 2 acres of municipal owned land be transferred to them for $1, for a fee of $1, for the purpose of establishing that affordable housing project. Further to that the county be in receipt of lands that do not then necessitate subsequent planning act approvals like zoning amendments, etc., to make it a viable build. So it's their desire to have a property that's what we call shovel ready in terms of zoning standards. So before you this evening, our staff are recommending and seeking the endorsement to convey that land as well as initiate the planning exercises that are needed to rezone that parcel or a portion thereof. As many of you are aware, I'm, as a registered professional planner, qualified to take us through a process such as that. And one of the big questions in supporting a density of 4 dwelling units is a hydro-G study. So one of the limitations of staff is that we don't have the ability to complete that study in-house, and we rely on Mark Boone, County Conservation. So we would be incurring an expense of a hydrogeological study to ensure that we have potable water and we're not going to adversely affect any neighboring wells based on such a density. And that would be included in some of the work that we would do as it moves forward this fall. I probably spoke too much on that and maybe not addressed everything that I should have, but I believe the recommendation, all 3 of those are before you this evening. If there are any questions that I could help clarify, I'm absolutely happy to do so. Thanks.
Anybody have any questions? Go ahead, Brenda.
Yes, thanks, Jason. I'm in favor of 1 and 2, but the third one is to sell the property for $1 to the county. I'm just wondering if there's been any consideration to selling it to the county for the cost of the Hydro G study. Which if we weren't embarking on this project, we wouldn't incur that cost.
Go ahead, Jason.
Through you. That's a great point, Councilor Lalonde. I have not had that conversation specifically with the county as to the cost. That was one of the specific inclusions of the county when the request for affordable housing was to seek land from a lower tier municipality at a very reduced rate. One of the points I forgot to mention, and we've had conversations as a management group relating to the hydrogeology assessment, was that we have a monitoring well at the southern portion of this site, as well as a well at the fire station. And in our works and understanding through Quinte Conservation's monitoring program, there's approximately 76 gallons a minute that's generating out of that monitoring well. So I haven't to date, or we as staff haven't to date gone to Mark Boone and Quinte Conservation to really understand what the full scope of a hydrogeological assessment would be. But we understand that we anticipate there not being a challenge in obtaining the water. And we're really going to try and scale the scope of that hydrogeological assessment down based on that historical knowledge that we have. So I put a cost of $5,000 to $7,000 in tonight's report, as that's your typical cost associated with such a study. But our hope as a group is to lower that cost based on the work that we already have completed and the historic monitoring in that area.
Go ahead, Brian.
Your Worship, to Councilor Lalonde's request, there is discussions about potential additional development that could occur in that area as well. So the hydrogeological report would be beneficial that we could utilize when considering additional development in that vicinity on other lands that we own as well. So we saw it as definitely an upfront cost as part of this application, but an opportunity to have additional considerations made for additional developments in the future as well by us taking on the Hydro G report.
Okay, Kevin had his hand up, then we'll go to John. Go ahead, Kevin.
Just wondering, maybe you can answer or not, Jason, the one bedroom thing. Why not two? Like, it doesn't take a lot more money to build a 2-bedroom than this one. I'm just wondering about that. Is it like more geared to seniors or something to that effect? I didn't understand why it was one.
Through your worship, unfortunately, I don't have a great answer for you, Councilor Richmond. It's obviously I understand they're working through budgetary limitations on certain projects. They have a 30-unit build and a 4-unit build that they're seeking funding on. As to why a 4-unit 4-bed as opposed to a 2-unit 4-bed, each being 2, or vice versa, I would defer to Connor Dory at Social Services, the county, and we can absolutely. I can absolutely get that information and provide that to council. It's just unfortunate I don't have that top with me.
Go ahead, John.
Yes, thank you. Jason, I think our minimum lot size requirement is a hectare, and this is just under that. Do we need a minor variance when you do the rezoning to accommodate that consideration?
Through your worship, great question, Deputy Wise. 100% accurate. The official plan for lot creation is 2.5 acres. My idea and my proposal for this is a site-specific rezoning application. Because it's a community facility zone, a CF zone, we would also wrap in any changes to performance standards that we would need. So by doing that, we don't have to run 2 separate processes in terms of zoning amendment to change the zoning to a residential use, and then also go for a minor variance, for example, to community adjustment to change some, lot area or lot frontage or any other provision. We can do that all in our site-specific zoning. So that would be absolutely something you would see written in before you as council.
Anybody else? Doug, go ahead.
Yeah, I think it's quite obvious it's headed for, it's quite obvious it's headed for seniors, so it's only a single bedroom, which is fine. I mean, most seniors hate to leave their communities, and go to someplace else, and Tamworth is adequately served with most of the facilities that people need to exist there. I don't have an issue with that. I mean, you're going to incur a cost with building a road here. I don't know if there's a chance that some of that could be covered through the county process. But I think it's, I think this is very important for us, and I move that we proceed with it.
We have a motion on the floor. Seconder, Linda? Go ahead, Linda.
Just coming back to Kevin's comment about the one bedroom, sorry to, when they did the survey in the region, that was the biggest thing that they noticed that was really, really lacking for affordable housing was one bedroom. So that, I believe, is why they're targeting this, is to address that lack.
Thursday morning, I got a meeting, Palace meeting, and Connor Dory over there, so maybe I'll just get a chance to have a chat with him. Maybe I can help answer your question, you'll want. That being said, we have a recommendation moved by Doug, second by Wenda. Anything else? All in favor of the motion? Motion is carried. Okay, Jason, we'll move on to the validation request, 53 Prince Street.
Thank you, Your Worship. This is a somewhat of a unique both application for you as council as well as unique setting in that we have Alex Cowell on Zoom. Alex, can you hear us? Okay, I can hear you. You can hear us, Alex? You can hear us okay, Alex?
Yes, I can,
Oh,
yeah.
excellent. So yeah, just continuing that, Your Worship, obviously this hybrid approach in terms of being able to present live and all be a part of this, as well as have individuals like Alex, the solicitor on behalf of the owners this evening, present and be a part of our meeting is an extremely advantageous feature, you know. COVID may not have been great for many things, but I'll give it this is a pretty cool setup. Moving on as to the agenda item itself, this is an application for validation, and what that really means in short is we're seeking to validate the existence of two lots that historically existed side by side in enterprise, 49 and 53 Prince Street, that were inadvertently merged on title and are legally considered one property currently. How we got to that state is essentially, historically, you could purchase a property and then purchase the adjacent property in trust with the same ownership to ensure that they wouldn't merge on title and result in this unforeseen exercise of having two houses on one lot and not each on their own individual lots. There was an error caused in the administrative end in that, as well as the transfer into the Land Titles Act with the in trust compounded that error. And essentially 49 and 53 Prince Street, owned by Brad and Cynthia Olson, resulted in one parcel and not able to be separately conveyed. The municipality was unaware of this, truthfully. Two roll numbers still exist, and two tax bills have still been charged for many, many years. It wasn't until, I believe, and Mr. Alex Cowell can confirm, but until one of the parcels was proposed to be sold, that it was discovered that through this validation, or through this administrative error, that the parcels had merged on title. In simplistic terms, what this validation is proposing to do is separate the two parcels. There's no new development proposed. They both are developed with single-family dwellings, and through this process, under the Planning Act, we're able to obtain the approval through municipal council and or the Committee of Adjustment. And from my understanding, the owners, are looking to sell the property, and it's compounding the sale of many other transactions. And the quicker way to approval was to come through municipal council as opposed to the end of September at our committee of adjustment meeting. So I just wanted to put that out there to make sure everybody was aware that the Planning Act allows that differentiation of approval. And what we're here to do through council is compliant with the Planning Act. I believe the planning or the report overviews the actual proposal, and I'll also draw your attention to the discussion section of our staff report this evening, which speaks to section 913 of our official plan. The township's official plan contains 7 policies within it as it relates to what to assess or how to assess applications such as this. When we're seeking to validate as a Planning Act exercise 2 parcels in which may have merged. The 7 criteria as outlined in the opinion of staff have been satisfied through this application. And for that reason, it's the opinion of staff that the proposal meets the intent of our official plan. In summary, staff's recommendation is that council grant the request of validation of title as a result of a Planning Act error, which creates an inadvertent Planning Act application or contravention, and allow these parcels to be separated for the purposes of conveyance. I'd turn it over to Mr. Cowell if he has anything further to add that I may have missed. And I'd also just like to mention to Mr. Cowell that his request or actual written submission, validation order submission has been provided and has been included on the agenda this evening. So council has been afforded the opportunity to review, as well as been provided staff reporting and bylaws.
Mr. Cowell, would you like to add anything to this?
So, good evening, Your Worship and councillors. I don't have a whole lot to add. I don't want to take up too much of your time. Obviously, myself and my client's interests are in line with council's recommendation. Again, I guess the one thing that maybe I would address is the whole kind of difference between a consent application and this validation application that we're proposing. Again, you see, as everyone would likely be familiar, consent applications are for proposing new developments and the creation of new lots and lot additions, etc. Many of the benefits of a consent are prospective in that they can continue to kind of benefit the land. We're in a position here where a validation certificate or order would be more appropriate, as we've had an inadvertent error in the application of the Planning Act. It was fairly unique timing. In 2008, another solicitor had registered a transfer attempting to put the neighboring parcel, 53 Prince Street into, I guess, both Brad and Cynthia Olson's name in trust, as Jason was referring to. However, shortly earlier in 2017 in December, the registry system, which did recognize trust, converted to the land title system in January of 2008, and effectively that led to these 2 lots being merged without the knowledge of either Brad or Cynthia, or effectively their mortgagees and any other debtor that's registered on title, which has put them in a fairly vulnerable spot. So that's another reason that we wanted to proceed with this as quickly as possible. But effectively, a validation is appropriate when you have these inadvertent errors, and that it will have the effect of actually validating title. So I'll leave it at there. If there's any specific questions that Jason can't help with, I'm happy to help.
Thank you. Any questions? Go ahead, Doug.
No, we need to proceed with the recommendation. I'll move it.
Moved by Doug, second by Kevin. Any more questions? All in favor of the motion? Motion is carried. Thank you, Mr. Cowell.
Thank you very much.
Okay, we go to the planning application information report. Go ahead, Jason.
Thank you, Your Worship. My final item for tonight's meeting is an information report. There's no recommendation included aside from accepting the report and which attempts to quantify the volumes in which we're processing applications here in the municipality. The first 9 months of 2021 have been extremely busy with 71 consent applications, 12 minor variances, and a single site plan control application. There is a fairly comprehensive Excel sheet that has been included as part of your package this evening to differentiate those different applications, as well as an overview of the budgetary impacts that were projected out at the onset of 2021 and how our revenues have targeted certain line items to date, recognizing that the month or the year is not included, and we anticipate those to increase from here on out. If there are any questions related to that information report, I'm happy to answer.
Okay, go ahead, Linda.
Yes, thanks, Jason. Just wondering what the line items that say Ontario Inc. mean, because there's a few of them.
Yeah, Councillor Lalonde, that's just simply the applicant's, that's the applicant per se. So Ontario Inc. is just a numbered company who has made the application. It's not a Jason Sands and Megan Sands as an applicant. It's an Ontario Inc. number that could be comprised of multiple owners.
Anybody else have questions? If not, I'd like a motion to receive the report. Moved by Sherry, second by Kevin. All in favor? Motion carried. Thanks, Jason. Thank you. We'll go to the manager of finance, Bouchard, draft surplus land policy.
So the policy you have in front of you is a surplus lands policy. We are required to have a policy on file for Section 270 of the Municipal Act. We do have a bylaw in place, 2009-511. This policy is supposed to be supported by a bylaw, and this would make us compliant and allow us to proceed if we want to go forward with any surplus lands.
Any questions for Christina? Go ahead, Kevin.
Probably don't know what I'm talking about, but in that it said something about staff and council. I just wasn't putting that two and two together. Maybe you could explain that a little better.
Yeah. So the policy is in place for both staff and council to follow. So it lays it out how we're going to bring forward surplus lands, what staff is going to do, and what council is going to be required to do on your end. So the policy says council is going to receive a report from staff that lists all of the information, what our recommendation is. Council will then have the right to say yes or no, pass a bylaw to declare them surplus, decide whether or not we're going to sell them by real estate, whether we're going to just sell them by a tender process. That will all be at council's discretion, and that's what the policy is outlined.
Thank you very much.
You're welcome.
Anybody else? Go ahead, John.
Thank you. What was missing in the existing policy that required this supplementary one, Christina?
We didn't have a policy.
That's a considerable omission.
Yes.
Thank you.
Anybody else? I'd like to look for a motion to do the recommendation. Moved by Doug, second by Debbie. Any more questions? All in favor of the motion? Motion's carried. Thanks, Christina. We'll go to Stone Mills accounts payable.
Okay, so the reports in front of you are for the August accounts payable. I don't have anything of note in there.
Any questions for Christina? Can I have a motion to pay the bills? Moved by Kevin, second by Sherry. All in favor? Motion's carried. The next one, Stone Mill Statement of Revenues and Expenditures, 2021.
Okay, so in front of you, you have the expenditures up to July 31st. I've put notes along the side of anything that would be calling your attention to. There was a mistake that was pointed out to me today, and I just had the budget in the wrong line. On page 2, under benefits, part-time, it should be benefits full-time, so I will correct that.
Any questions? Have a motion to go ahead, Kevin.
Christine, did you see anything that really stands out that there's an issue with it? I went through it briefly, but I didn't notice anything that really seemed out of whack. I just wondered if there's anything that steps out in you.
Normally at this time of year, we've seen a little more of our bills come through, like more of our capital bills, but for whatever reason, the companies are a little bit slower getting them to us. But I saw a whole bunch come through in the last couple of weeks, so I have a feeling that will make a difference to some of those capital items that are still sitting there showing zero balance.
Do you have something, John?
I don't know.
You want to make the motion?
I will make the motion.
Motion by John, second by Sherry. All in favor?
Thank you.
Thanks, Christine. Okay, we'll go to C.O. Brooks draft municipal employment vaccination policy.
Thank you, Your Worship, and to council. Number of municipalities across our province, a number of organizations are starting to look at an employment vaccination policy. There's no expectation that council would endorse this policy this evening. However, we would like to start the discussion as to what our municipal position is going to be in a vaccination policy. Before you this evening is a policy that we believe represents our legal rights at this point, as far as providing for encouragement to have employees vaccinated, while allowing individuals who choose not to have that right as well, with some restrictions that are attached to that. So we believe that this is very much a policy that protects the health and safety of our employees. Will also supports pro-choice for individuals that wish not to be vaccinated, and we're hopeful that the two different choices will not put either side's position at risk. So we have this before you this evening to consider. This policy is a policy that is near cookie cut from Loyalist Township, also being endorsed in portions with Lennox and Addington, and so it has a little bit of a geographical touch in that what's expected in our neighboring municipalities is also being endorsed at ours. We're at the liberty of council to determine what approval we get, whether it's this policy, whether there's additional amendments made to it. And I'd be happy if there's any questions of council to either consider them as part of a draft amendment or to discuss the logic behind that position if there are any questions from council.
Any questions? I'm going to start out with one. If we don't soon get out of this, our arena is going to be open, like it be before our next meeting.
So this policy is just a policy that deals with the employment vaccination. The arena opening is actually being mandated by September 22nd. There's provincial regulations that are put in place that will actually require attendees, participants, users of our arena to show proof of vaccination or to be not allowed to be entered. So this is a separate issue in the sense that it's employment first, but it's also one that's not mandated by the province and passed down to municipalities. So it's slightly different in the sense that this is our municipal operations and how it applies to staff. To your point, Reeve Smith, the arena opening will be dealt with as far as provincial policy. We'll have to create a system that complies with that. So it's highly likely that we will have to have somebody staffing the doors to ensure that individuals that are entering will provide proof of vaccination, and individuals that are unable to without explanation in accordance with provincial regulation will be declined entry to the facility.
I guess to follow up on that, there are two more questions. If our staff isn't vaccinated and you got kids coming in there under 12, it can work both ways. I mean,
How to protect our people, that's what it works for both.
So at present, for council's benefit, we believe that all of our arena staff are double vaccinated. To our knowledge, there's at least one member of our full-time staff that is not vaccinated. And I'm not sure of some of our part-time workers. With the endorsement of this policy would create a requirement for managers to roll out this policy to respective departments. As far as individuals and personal protective equipment highlighted in the policy, the current standard to which we're at requires that same, without 2 meter distancing, they must remain masked as it is. This policy is more in place for as requirements ease or as situations ease from provincial regulations as far as privileges provided to those that are double vaccinated. That's when this policy really rolls into action and allows people to graduate through a progressive system versus what we're at now. So I totally concur with your point as far as staff and vaccination policies. Likewise, if they're not vaccinated, they won't be allowed to work at the arena by virtue of not being able to enter the arena. So it's essentially a policy. Now, the difficulty that we have with that, Reeve Smith, is that it hasn't been challenged and it hasn't been proven quite bluntly that you have the ability to halt employment by virtue of non-vaccination. So we'll be seeking legal position if we have full-time members or part-time members that are not double vaccinated in our community center. But the returning employees that we do have are double vaccinated.
Okay, thank you. And, go ahead, Sherry.
I just wonder who, at the arena, who will be doing the checking? Will we have to hire someone else to do that? I don't know that that's a fair position to expect a student to do that.
Well, to answer your question, Councillor Milligan, the discussions have been typically vague as far as how this will roll out, in the sense that we're hoping for some more provincial direction as to what the requirements will actually be. We're hopeful that the responsibility of ensuring participants are vaccinated can be supported by user groups. So user groups would sign in their individuals and create the contact tracing form similar to what we had in the past, but would also confirm their vaccination status. And municipal employees would then be searching and checking on that information as it's as it's required. So we would have our own check, but it would not be 100% responsible. We're not sure that we're going to be able to download that support to our user groups. But without that, our plan is actually to use a student screener, that is, and just to confirm access. And we would then, they would be supported by a facility attendant or the supervisor, whoever's on staff. But their job would just be to allow entrance and discussion as to the vaccination status. They would not be responsible for disclosing or dealing with any medical exemptions that would come from above them, but they would have a portion of their hour, so to speak, dedicated to a door response. So one thing that works in our favor, at least in discussion's sake, is that that the entrance to the facility is still likely to be a controlled entrance. So it's 20 minutes before your ice time, we'll be doing entrance into the facility, and you'll be expected to be out 20 minutes after yours. So it will leave some flexible time as far as janitorial support or attendance support for the supervisor. But to answer all of your questions this evening, we're learning somewhat on the fly as far as what's become acceptable standard for other recreation facilities. But we're hoping that information will be more fluid as the day comes.
Go ahead, John.
Thank you. Ryan, getting back to the report itself about the employees and vaccinations, I don't see any requirement in here for testing. I know some places are, if an employee is not vaccinated, they have to, I think at their own expense, they have to be tested a couple of times a week. Have you given any thought to that?
We haven't.
Sorry to revise, we haven't, on the basis that they would still have to commit to the screening on a regular basis. So failed screening would result in non-entrance. Failed screening also normally requests a negative test prior to returning to the workplace. A majority of the policies that we have saw mandatory testing or intermittent testing, if you will, have been in the health field or the school system. And so, again, we're attempting to proceed with caution and reasonable endorsement to get vaccinated, but we are a field that does not necessarily have that vulnerable sector behind us in our entirety. So there may be some additional requirements, such as the arena, that we need to impose on that facility that we may not in, say, the Public Works Department. So it is something that we will be adjusting on the fly with period-wise, but at present, we're attempting to continue with the positive encouragement. We're working towards double vax. And I'm happy to, say with confidence that we are well over 99%. I think we have one member that is not vaccinated. So with some, continued support, we're hopeful to minimize any exposure to our staff.
Anybody else? Go ahead, Doug.
Yeah, Brian, I'm fully supportive of this. I think everybody should get vaccinated if they're physically able to do it through their medical reasons and that. Anyway, I think that we would be wise to make sure that this information is put out to our employees to let them know that it is coming. Just a heads up so that the employees can possibly make preparations. I know they say that the first-time vaccinations doubled and doubled again as soon as the passports were announced. So maybe we'll be successful in completing the people getting vaccinated. I think we should put it out to our people.
Go ahead, Wanda.
I agree, and I was just wondering if the section called vaccine education on page 3, it lists the 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 elements or components that non-vaccinated employees will have to work through. And I wonder if we could post that on our website as well for just the general public vaccine education. I think it sounds like it's very good information that maybe should be shared with the municipality as a whole.
Okay, anything else on this? If no, go ahead, John.
Yeah, thank you. Just one more thing on the arena question. I did text a friend of mine, Tim LaPratt, who's the recreation director. I'm not sure his actual title. It's up front now. And they're getting a legal opinion on whether they can let the user groups do the vaccine passport validation. So we might save a few bucks by not asking our legal opinion if we can find out what answer Sophronic gets.
I guess just to follow up on that, my younger brother, he plays hockey up around Lindsay area somewhere, Russell. And he's the head of the team, and they've already told him to get a list and a proof of double vaccinations. When they get to the door, they'll give it there within 10 minutes to get in, and certain time he goes. And that's the policy of arena quest. So anyway, just pass that out. So that being said, can I have a motion to receive the report? John, Doug and Debbie, all in favor? Motion carried. Thanks, Brian. Okay, Brian, go ahead. Sorry.
Your Worship, I'm sorry to rush the season along, but the second report that I have is the 2021 December holiday season office hours. Continually, this normally runs in cycles of 3 years at a time, and it's largely driven by the days to which our statutory holidays by policy fall on for work days during the December holiday season. As I'm sure you can imagine by the request, I have requests from all of my staff to be off from the days that are attached here, which has actually spurred me bringing this report to council to actually endorse a closure from December 23rd until January 3rd. Largely, the reason for this is by virtue of our policy that says statutory holidays that fall on weekends go to the next business day or the business day prior. This essentially means that there's very few hours that an employee is required to work during that week. So without endorsement of this policy, we could move we could split them up and people could be off, some days into January, some days, you know, in the week between Christmas and New Year's. But historically, our office has seen very little volume. For instance, you know, we're not usually dealing with a lot of building applications, severance applications. We have had, you know, some municipal tax payments, but we've historically been essentially in the office with very little to do, as far as dealing with the public. So there is enough vacation. Individuals are planning the last quarter of the vacation request. And so I thought it was prudent that we look at this well in advance to allow employees to plan their vacation for the remaining portion of the year. If there's any questions from council, I'd be happy to answer them.
Any questions? Questions, council? No, we have a motion to, go ahead, Doug.
Well, just one question, and that is, if we follow this procedure, which we have in other years, closed for the week, nobody will be disadvantaged, no ratepayer will be disadvantaged. For example, if they come in to pay their taxes in the office is closed, that would be handled fairly.
Thank you, Councilor Davis. And normally what I ask the treasurer to do is to give a couple days grace upon return from January 3rd, but a majority of individuals, not all, of course, there are still individuals that choose to pay in person. During COVID, a majority of people still have the ability to drop off checks. We have the drop box that's here at the municipal office, as well as the majority of people have also moved to online bank payments. So we still accept those during those times. And we would just ask the treasurer to give a couple days grace as we move into January to allow any individuals that choose to pay in person still a couple days to do so.
Okay, can somebody make a motion to receive the report? Wenda? Sherry? All in favor? Motion carried. Chief Building Official Detler, Stone Mill Recreation Ice Slab Replacement Results. Go ahead, Jake.
Thank you, Your Worship. I'm happy to report these three submissions back to council and a recommendation to move forward with recon construction for the long-planned ice slab replacement, which is now scheduled to start in April. And we received a price that I'm happy to report was $32,000 less than the last round. Still a little bit over the price which I intended to, the budget price that was in the 2021 budget. And really the budget price that was in my mind when I made the grant application in, I think, 2019. So I guess with all the price increases, we're probably happy to keep it to $19,500 more than the $1,250,000 that we initially had in the price. Not to skip over that we also paid I believe a separate $46,000 to our consultant to design and to run the competition. Actually, two competitions now. One of the things that some that were reading this might find a little confusing was when I originally started this process, I believed that we were actually going to be well within our budget and there was going to be room to spend money on a few other things. So we did this separate price so that, you know, they did some pricing on, you know, putting new floors down in the west hallway, for instance. But obviously with the results, we're going to have to just do the bare minimum, and that's kind of what I'm bringing to council. I'm bringing you the option of just the base bid, plus opting for a swing gate for the Zamboni door instead of the overhead door, which was in the base bid. It is quite expensive. It's a lot cheaper to just do a swing door, a little more labor, but and that's why the actual staff recommendation number is $24,500 less than the base bid for pre-con construction. Sorry if that's confusing.
Any questions for Jake on this? Go ahead, John.
Are we supplying any in kind for this, Jake? Hauling away rubble, supplying base granular, anything like that?
No, and I don't believe as per the grant that we're probably allowed to do that either, so. Go ahead, Doug.
Jake, what, Freecon, have they done any work in our neighboring municipalities or anywhere locally?
Yes, they've recently I don't want to narrow in on it, but they've basically done very similar project in a neighboring municipality in the last 2 years. And all three of these companies that submitted were required in the tender to have a long list of references and to have done this work several times in the last 5 years. And so all of these three companies that submitted were well qualified for this job, and that's probably why we only received 3 submissions, because of the requirements in the tender that they have significant experience in this industry. And actually, Freecon is just finishing up a project at the Aaronsville Catholic School right now, so they're an active general contractor in our area.
So Freecon is a general contractor then, not just a specialist in refrigeration of that. That's being sold to.
Yes, they're a general contractor that builds schools and does all sorts of work outside of arenas, but that also has significant experience retrofitting and building new arenas. And they will not be doing the refrigeration part of this. That will be Simcoe Refrigeration. And actually, Simcoe is listed as the refrigeration contractor from all 3 of these general contractors.
Thanks, Chief.
Anybody else? We have a recommendation in front of us. Moved by John, second by Sherry. All in favor of the motion? Motion's carried. Moving on to Stone Mills Building Recreation Parks Activity Update.
Thank you, Your Worship. Yeah, just like other departments, just giving an update on how things are going in 2021. And you probably don't need this report. You probably just need to be able to drive down the road to know that things are busy, not just in Stone Mills, but I think really all of Ontario in terms of construction, new home construction, even commercial construction. A lot of, probably unprecedented levels of construction in the whole province. So, is there any questions on this report? There's a lot of numbers there.
Any questions for Jake? If not, I'll like the motion to receive the report. Moved by Doug, second by Sherry. All in favor? Anybody else have any questions? Jake, while we're here. Go ahead, Kevin.
Yeah, I did. Maybe you could help me, Jake, with, I'm just wondering how the Camden East Post Office was doing. It doesn't look like you're doing anything at all there, and I'm just wondering, do you have any input on that, or do you know anything about it?
Actually, Director of Developmental Services, Jason Sands, might be able to answer that question better than me. The last time I spoke with, I believe I spoke with the owner of the facility, of the property that was proposed to have the post office, and they were happy that, they were informed that they would not need to go through the site plan control process based on what we believe the scope of work was. And they were going to get started with just enlarging some parking spaces. Outside of that, I haven't received any phone calls from them. So I would assume that at this point they're still developing some sort of drawings for the small amount of work that they were about to embark on.
Okay, it does look like they're going to pave out back there at the parking out behind the building as well. I noticed that, but the building itself doesn't look like they're doing anything. Maybe they are inside, I didn't know. But I have another question for you, Jake, if I could. The bleachers at Yarker Ball Diamond, we bought a new set there. I think it's probably a couple years ago now, and we refurbished the old one a bit. I'm hearing that it's pretty ragged. I haven't seen it myself, so I can't say. But I'm wondering, and we said at the time we'd buy one and then maybe later get another new one. I'm just wondering if that's in the cards for down the road.
If it's the wish of council, we could include something like that in the 2022 budget to have a similar aluminum set of bleachers that we installed several years ago. Second set installed there. Yeah, I was at a few ball games in Yorker this year, and actually, you know, there's 2 bleachers, and it's unbelievable when you get. There was not hardly enough places for people in that complex. There was a lot of standing room.
Well, that would be great if we could put that forth and move on that and get another set and remove the old ones. I'm just hearing that they could be dangerous as well, so that's why I'm bringing it up. And I thank you very much.
I was going to add, Councillor Richmond, you're aware that the post office was meant to go not in the main building, that you're on the property, that it's actually in the rear building with the siding.
Oh.
Okay. Okay. Well, I mean, I don't know if that's for public knowledge, but if you're looking for construction or something to be happening in the main limestone building, then you're looking in the wrong place.
I'm probably looking in the wrong place. Thank you.
Right corner.
Further to Camden East, where are we with our plans for the former post office building site?
Yes, we've had thank you, Deputy Reeve John Weiss. We've had an initial meeting on site with a local landscape architect, and we actually have a subsequent meeting scheduled for tomorrow there as well to talk about what the plans are, and when we get that draft of this design, we will be bringing that to council to run it by councilors and hopefully get some public comments coming in regarding the draft.
Thanks.
You have something to say on that, Jason?
Thank you. My only comment would be, as building inspector, Chief Building Inspector Dell mentioned, our hope is to come in October back to council with that work that we're working on actively with the landscape architect. Just put a time frame to that. Thank you.
Okay, thanks, Jake. Okay, we'll move down to new business and statement. Sorry. Oh, sorry. Sorry. Go ahead, Linda.
I'm just wondering if Jeff Thompson would like to speak to Waste Management Day that's going to be deferred until 2022, and what alternatives are available to the ratepayers if they want to take their stuff somewhere else now.
Hazardous waste?
Sorry, yes.
Yeah, just a quick update on the Household Hazardous Waste Day. Everyone knows it was canceled in, I believe, April. We had the date set due to the lockdown. The company we had, they offered one more date for the 2021, which was July. And I didn't think that was a great time to have a Household Hazardous Waste Day. Any of the local municipalities that have held one, recently Napanee, it was booked prior to the pandemic, back in January, February, the same as what we did. Unfortunately, ours landed in lockdown where theirs didn't. So it is planned for 2022 to run Household Hazardous Waste Day. In the meantime, we've had maybe 6 calls over the summer. We've directed people to, there's a facility in Bath, Brendar. We're not really advertising that because it's a private company, but they do take any of the household hazardous waste stuff for free. There's some cost to certain items, but most of it is free.
Okay, thank you. Under items for consideration, Brian, do you want to go ahead here?
Yeah, sure, Worship. In past years, on election evening, we've had council members pulling double duty and working elections, et cetera, and not available on that evening. This year, our council meeting also falls on election evening. In preparation of such, the first meeting in September, we asked, as you've seen earlier this evening, we asked for the departmental updates to come from the building, recreation, parks departments, the planning, as well as the finance. My recommendation to council is that we cancel the September 20th. I do know there are members that are intending to be in other locations that evening. And your worship, if there is a need to call a meeting due to time sensitive issues, we would be doing that with 48 hours notice. In accordance with our procedural bylaw. Our next scheduled meeting, I believe, is October 3rd. That would come after that date. So we were aware of the possibility of such coming into play, and therefore tried to tend to as many important issues this evening as we could to get those done in preparation that council does delay. That delay is of course at the discretion of council if that still exists as it has in past years.
What's council's thoughts on this proposal?
Well, that would work for me well because I am working for Elections Canada and I'm probably going to be busy that day. And so that would be great if we could, but I'll leave it up to the rest here to decide that.
So we plan on going October 3rd. If something comes up, we can call a meeting at any time in 48 hours. Fair enough? Okay. Sorry, it's the 4th, yeah, okay, good enough, October 4th, yeah.
Your hand up there.
Then you go, Kevin.
Oh, I'll talk to Jeff later.
Okay, good. For a motion, moved by Doug, second by Debbie, all in favor of the motion, motion's carried, thank you. New business, statements from members? I guess there is none.
Oh, sorry. Go ahead, John.
Yeah, Jeff, I noticed you've got a couple of trees out front here that look kind of sad. Are they alive or dead? And if they're dead, are you going to replace them and care for them?
Sure, I'll speak with our building department and we'll get them replaced.
Well, it's out in front of the roads, you know. I thought you'd care about it.
I didn't even notice, actually.
I like that job when you ask and they look at each other.
So, just go ahead, Debbie.
Yeah, I just wanted to invite council personally to the Stone Mills Family Festival this weekend in Enterprise. Full line of entertainment, looks like lots of interest, and Mr. Smith will be representing the municipality at the opening ceremonies. Please come out, drop in, say a visit, have a visit, and watch our children at play.
Anybody else? Okay, we'll move on to, Brian, do you want to talk about the closed session here, how we're going to do it with people watching, whatever?
Yeah, sure, Chip, thank you. So in keeping with the same procedures that we followed in previous meetings, we have a closed session meeting that will follow this evening's agenda. The topic of discussion is an educational matter for council members. This meeting will convene with the motion to adjourn being completed. We will stop the live feed from YouTube and have a separate meeting of closed nature for council education.
Okay, with that being said, we're going to have the confirmation by law. Moved by Debbie, second by Doug, all in favor? Motion to adjourn. To adjourn officially, yes, motion to adjourn. Sherry and Doug, or John, all in favor? Carried.